Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
We have a question about building a child's desire to communicate. We have a parent, and we've had this question before about how can I increase my son with his expressive language, but she goes on to say, but what can I do to help him to want to communicate with us?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And the first thing that motivates children to want to communicate is that they've learned that communication meets their needs. And that's why the very first form of communication is called a demand or a request. And that's because the child figures out very quickly that when I say cookie, I get cookie. And when I say out, they take me outside or whatever it is, right? And so that is the most important way to teach a child the value of communication. It is through manding. So I would work a lot on making sure that the child understands that when they ask for something, they get it, right? That's one. The other thing is the next round of communication in normal development is that you go to tacting. Tacting is when you start to point things out in the environment and label them. The reason that our kids do that, typically developing kids do that, is because they want to get the parents' attention on that thing that they saw, because their reward at that time is that shared attention. So it's sort of like that's the next phase, which is paying attention when the child labels something. So those are the basic formats of teaching a child, or the basic concepts, I guess, of teaching a child to desire communication, or the value of communication. I think that's what this parent is referring to.
Okay. I also want to say too that I know a little bit about this kiddo who is so into space and planets and has a lot of like high interest areas. And just like we were talking before about when we know what the kid likes and wants, it just makes it that much easier. If, you know, I know that sometimes it feels cruel, but I remember standing in the kitchen of a friend who had two neurotypical girls. And the youngest one, I was standing in her kitchen, and the youngest one came in and was pointing and doing all this stuff. And the mom was standing there with a cookie, and she was like, "You want this?" And the child was nodding and pointing and whatever. And she's like, "Then you got to say cookie." And she took the cookie and stuck it behind her back. And this was with a neurotypical kid. And the little girl danced up and down, and she was like, you know, and then she said, "Cookie," right? Close enough, approximation. And the mother went there, and she goes, "They'll never speak if you don't make them." And this was a neurotypical, never, and I was there with a child with autism, and I was like, what just happened?
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? And I know that a lot of people think, well, that's cruel. It isn't. It's not cruel, because it's at 2 seconds, and they, I'm standing in line at the store, and I have to ask, can I have that before they're going to give it to me? There's nothing cruel about it, and it's shaping behavior. And when you get into the mindset where you make everything that they want, like in a place where it's visible, and they have to ask for it, but before they have it, they eventually they learn, oh, this is so much faster than all the other ways I was asking for things.
Absolutely. And you know, Shannon, it's interesting because this is, if you think about it, again, and I always, we always think that we're doing something very unusual with our kids because they have autism, but it isn't. This is normal, completely typical. This is what happens to all of us. Like, if from the moment you were born, someone tried to predict all your needs and just gave them to you, right? If they just spoon-fed you everything before you asked for it, you would also never develop the ability to ask for things or language. So what happens with our kids, I believe, Shannon, is that we, you know, when you have a baby, and I've said this a few times, when there's a baby, as parents, as moms, we have to predict what they're trying to say. We have to figure out when they cry, do they need, what's my baby saying? Is he hungry? Is he wet? Is he in pain? What's going on? Does he need to sleep? And we have to figure that out without the child being able to say anything. With kids on the spectrum, what happens is at some point they get a diagnosis, and we as parents think that is, you know, from that moment on, we cannot treat the child normally anymore. And we continue to try to figure out their needs. Whereas with any other child, when they hit 1, what do we say? We're constantly telling our kids, use your words, use your words, use your words. And we don't do that with our kids on the spectrum because we think they can't use their words. And so the bottom line is you need to make the child use their words. And you can then give, and it's all about manding. Manding is very, very important, being able to establish that connection for the child, that if I use my words, I get the rewards that I wanted. That's a huge, huge step.
Absolutely. Okay.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.